Hello everybody. I haven't made a video in a while, so I thought I'd weigh in some of the stuff that's buzzing around now. I think it's hilarious. Mike and Kim, that 1975 video you made was excellent, and this is what spurred on this desire for me to weigh in as well. The video is comical, to say the least. Um, I can't believe that they actually dredged up this old fossil. This was something that died a long time ago and should probably have stayed there. But no, they decided they wanted to bring it back up. Okay, so let's make fun of it for a little bit. Um, of course, at the time I was around, yes, 1975, but I was only not one, I was only 4. And so I was too little to understand what was going on. However, I do remember later on, when I was preteens, hearing talks and people giving comments, speaking about, and they never mentioned the date, but they would say years ago, people thought the end was coming, and they went out and bought these fancy homes and cars and spent all this money and borrowed money, knowing full well that they couldn't pay it back. And then when that time came and went and nothing had happened, then a lot of these people fell out of the truth. And I've always heard that for years, and I didn't know what they were really talking about, and I'd always wanted to ask, just never did. And until I became a teenager, and then something happened within the family. We were talking about some stuff, and well, one of the things that my dad had always wondered about, my oldest brother, who's in his 70s now, he apparently had been part of this 1975 thing, and he had fallen off the deep end when that midlife crisis, when he hit his 40s, and he left his family and his wife and kids. And mind you, his daughter is just 8 months older than me. So yeah, we had one of those families. So anyway, so he left everybody and just he sort of fell off the earth for a while. It took some time before my dad caught up with him to find out what was going on. And he didn't understand the fact. I mean, he was upset about the fact that he did that to his family. And because his mother, so my 2 oldest brothers are my dad's sons from his first marriage. So his mother did that to them, and it's just up and left. And they had stayed with my dad rather than her. They would just stay with her periodically. But anyway, but he was part of that group in the early 70s, late 60s, early 70s, that caught on to this. And then that had started another conversation with my father. He talked about the society made some mistakes in the early 70s when they started the elder body arrangement, saying that because the end is near, we're having more congregations, we need more brothers. So they started getting brothers serving as elders in their early and mid 20s. And sure, it's not the fact that they can't do it, but let's face it, when you're in your 20s like that, you don't have a lot of experience to be able to do something like that. Of course, guys in their 50s and 60s don't have it either, so I guess that's a moot point. But anyway, so he was one of these ones that was made an elder. He was young, mid-20s, and he was all about 1975. And Dad told me that, of course, he didn't go along with it. And so he would start up conversations to get people talking about it. And so he would refute it. And so he was telling me, I was just flabbergasted when he told me about it. Because, of course, we're looking at hindsight. And hindsight's always 20/20. But anyway, so he's telling me these people are talking about, and he was mentioning the talk in the late 60s, Stay Alive Till 75. And it caught me as funny because it was a catchphrase that apparently a lot of people had used. And I had heard about the talk, never heard it, of course, until, thank you, Mike and Kim, for putting that up. I finally got to hear that one. But I'd always heard about it for many, many years. And so I heard the talk, and it was so funny looking back now. But so Dad would talk to these people, and they would bring, and they were all so happy about it and energetic about it, and oh, let's do all we can now because Armageddon's coming. And he would just, he said, wait just a second, now think about this. I don't think that the organization is ready for this yet. I don't think it's going to happen. And oh, they get upset at him and tell him that there's something wrong with him. And my brother, oldest brother, would they'd get in arguments apparently about it, and he'd ask my dad, where's your faith, where's your faith? And my dad'd say, hey, it's where it's always been. And even one of my other brothers, his mother-in-law and her husband, they were close friends of the family, had called him an apostate for thinking that way. Ridiculous, huh? I mean, and that really hurt his feelings because he didn't want to be portrayed as an apostate, because he was very much into the organization at the time, and he was until he got sick here some years back, and before he died. And he was, by then, for quite a few years, he was starting to get a little irritated and didn't like what the organizations were doing. But anyway, he didn't like that somebody thought of him as that way. Hurt his feelings. And so I mean, it just opened my eyes. I'm like, wow, I didn't know that. And so I actually started looking up, because I mean, my mom and dad had been around for a long time, so they had all the old books and all the old bound volumes and everything. And I started doing research, and I really actually didn't start doing it until they released the CD-ROM way back when. And I started looking it up, and that's when I saw the articles, Watchtowers, Kingdom Ministries, all that stuff. And it talked about how different ones, I mean, praising the fact that they were selling off their homes, cashing in their retirements and insurance policies and all this stuff, and then going where the need is great, or just serving as pioneers, whatever, so that they can serve the rest of the time out just doing that. So when 1975 comes and goes, all the money is gone, and they have nothing to show for it anymore. And consequently, the area where I grew up in Northern California, Grass Valley, California, there's a lot of people there that have left because of that. I mean, it was years ago they left. And many who are still there, but you can tell they're kind of like zombies, because they don't know what else to do. And that's kind of sad when you think about it. It's like they're automatons now. They're just doing it because that's just what they know. But what gets me is the fact that here they're talking about the society didn't say Armageddon was going to be 1975. However, they may as well have said it with just the words they used. And then to go along with it, they allowed these talks like stay alive till 75. And that was a joke of a talk. And then they allowed circuit overseers and district overseers to propagate this. And so this was used in assemblies and conventions. And naturally, this rubbed off on local elder bodies, and they too began to run with it. And then afterwards, when everything's all said and done, then they come up and say, well, we didn't say the end was coming. We just said it was an interesting year. It's like, really? You're gonna use that as a cop-out? But I didn't know about that yearbook where it says they own up to that responsibility, but they made sure that was in an area where probably people don't usually read, because we would get the yearbooks. I'd never read them. I would thumb through them, and that was all I'd do. Well, I had the intentions of reading them, but I never did. So yeah, they're going to tuck it away where they know somebody's not going to read it, or it's just such a small statement that people are going to forget about it just as soon as they read it. And so now they're going to dig up this old mess and put it. To me, it sounds like they're opening a can of worms. I don't know if they're just getting desperate or what, but it was comical. This video is comical because it's showing this man. It's supposed to take place in the mid 90s or late 90s, and and he's talking about 20 years before, and how he did some reading and some studying, and he didn't believe in it, but others did. But then, when it all was said and done, they adjusted their circumstances so that they can continue serving. It was like, oh, maybe some did that, but look, come on, the ones that did are now zombies. They're just kind of living that lie, and it's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. I can't help but laugh because, I mean, come on. And you know, I have to admit to the fact too that while I was in it, and I was a very active ministerial servant, they were even considering me at one point for an elder in the 90s, and a lot of people, again, this was never put in any magazines, but it was alluded to that, oh, the end of this millennium is coming, and the new one is starting, and oh, Armageddon's got to be just, you know. And so so a lot of people were thinking, oh, 2000, you know. Well, now it's 2017, so what excuses are they going to come up with? Are they going to, 40 years from now, are they going to go back and say, oh, 40 years ago, we talked about the people talking about 1975? It's like, okay. Or 100 years, 2075. Stay alive till 2075. I think somebody on YouTube calls themselves that or something like that. But yeah, let's we can keep laughing about this all day long, but come on, it's just funny, and they just keep dredging up stupid stuff in the past. Are they going to start revisiting ideas of 1914? Interesting. Maybe they could, and that would be funny too. But anyway, part of I kind of wanted to say this before I went, before I stopped the video. Now this is the funny part. Some of these teachings go all the way back to Russell's time. Now my dad explained this to me, and that this was the general idea for a long time. And so when the 1975 crap came on, they sort of incorporated this idea. And so the idea was that each creative day from Genesis was 7,000 years. So that at the end of, when Adam and Eve were created, was the end of the 6th day, or towards the end of the 6th day. So that marked 42,000 years since the creation of Earth, which we know that's hogwash, because we know that it's a lot older than that. Life has been on this earth for a lot longer than 42,000 years or whatever. So that at the end, shortly after Adam and Eve were created, then was the end of the 6th day. So 1970, okay, so going along with that line of thought, then you enter the 7th day. So 7,000 years for that. So that brings you, at the end of that was 49,000 years. So this mirrors, or this is supposed to have mirrored the Judaic system, which every 50 years, or at the start of every 50 years, marked the Jubilee year. And that Jubilee year was a time of celebration. Anybody that was indentured or a slave, let's call it what it is, were let go or allowed to let go, as if being a slave is a good idea to begin with. I mean, that's a whole nother can of worms. Don't get me started on that crap. Slavery, no, we're not talking about that right now. I'll do that some other time when I'm good and mad. Um, so yeah, the end of that, unless you wanted to be a slave, like anybody wants to be a slave. You really think so? I don't. I know I wouldn't. But let's face it, it's just it's stupid reasoning, false reasoning. So yeah, Jubilee year. So this is what the end of that 1,000 years is, once Satan is let loose a second time, and then he's done away with, and then everlasting life for everybody. Okay, so that's kind of the thinking. So 75 then marks 6,000 years since the creation of man. Now, how they figured that, I really don't know. I mean, even the years that we use are a little sketchy, because when they started using it, they weren't quite accurate to begin with. So let's face it, we could be further along from that, or not quite that far. Who knows? But let's just say they are right, and let's just say for geeks and shiggles that 6,000 years ago man was created, just for argument's sake, and say that 7,000 years marked since the creation of Adam. So yeah, okay, Armageddon's got to happen, because then you got to have the 1,000 years, and then that ends that 7,000 year seventh day. But what they don't know, and this is the question I've been asking for 20 some odd years, how did they know when that seventh day started? If Adam and Eve were created just before the end of the sixth day, then doesn't that mean then that 6,000 years is not yet there until that 6,000th year has actually got here? So let's just say, for instance, and we'll just use 100 years. Let's say that Adam was 100 years old when he got kicked out of the garden, and marking the end of the seventh day, or the sixth day, and the start of the seventh. So that would mean that the end of the 6,000 years wouldn't happen until 2075, if the math is correct, which I don't think it is by any means. But let's just say, so again, stay alive till 2075. Okay, I'm done. Oh, I'm sorry. I laugh. Okay, so it's funny, but I had to do it. Thanks for listening, everybody. I love you all. Have an enjoyable weekend, and a nice Memorial Day. Love you all. Goodbye.